Christos Anesti, Christ is risen. So today is Easter in the Greek Orthodox Church, and I am making leg of lamb. I do this every year, usually for a house full of people. This year, because it's 2020 and we're all under quarantine, I'm not able to do that. So I am still making leg of lamb, and it's quite a bit of lamb for our family, but we'll manage. We'll eat it for several days. A lot of people love lamb and they tell me, oh my gosh, I could never make it on my own, but it's really very simple. So I'm just gonna really quick show you kind of how to handle a leg of lamb. So I bought a boneless lamb, boneless leg, and bone in just changes the cook time. So it doesn't really matter. This is what was available, and so this is what I got. I rinse it off, I pat it dry, and then I make slits all over the lamb. And I have already sliced up about 3 garlic cloves. And you just stick those down in the holes. And you can do more or less just depending on your preference. I like about 12 to 15. My dad would probably put about 30 slices in. It's just your own preference. And on the back side, this is where they've butchered it, so you don't really have to make slits. You can just kind of slide it right in there where they have cut through the lamb for you already. Just put a few bits in there. So now that I have all the garlic in my lamb, and I actually didn't even use all of it, in here are my spices. I have about 2 teaspoons of oregano, 2 teaspoons of rosemary, a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of fresh ground black pepper. And I just kind of mix them all together like this. You don't have to use a mortar and pestle or anything like that. I just like to because it's kind of fun. So that's my mix of spices, and I'm going to use about 1 lemon's worth of juice at the get-go, and then I'm going to reserve the rest of it and kind of put some more on later as I cook this. Kind of like I baste it, or I might just put the extra lemon juice into the baking pan and use that as I baste throughout the process. I don't baste a whole lot. My yaya, that's Greek for grandma, she used to baste all the time, but I only do it here and there. So I just use a little bit of this and kind of rub it in there, and where I think it's most important is in the back, to get it in those little spots, so it kind of gets inside the lamb. So I've put some lemon juice on, and I've got lavi, olive oil. I don't think Greeks can cook without olive oil. And you can use any kind of olive oil, but Greek olive oil is really robust. If you want something lighter, you can certainly do that. I like really dark green. I never buy olive oil. Well, first of all, I always buy it from family friends who get their oil from the family farms in Greece. But if I don't do that, I get first cold press. That oil tastes better than other oils to me. It's also better for you, the cold pressing. So I just drizzle probably like 2 tablespoons worth on there. This is what we do. So my yaya would always just tell me to rub the oil into your hands. And she had really young looking hands, so maybe that's the secret, and I always do it. I will wash my hands later because, lamb guts. So then you just take your spices, the oregano and rosemary and salt and pepper, and rub it all over. And this is good messy. My kids like to help with this part often because, they're boys, and I don't know, boys like really messy stuff. I've never known a Greek person to put mint on their lamb. That's a thing that drives me nuts. I don't know why people like it. That mint jelly is so sugary to me, but I don't know. To each his own. There you go. So that's my version, and it's kind of based on what my dad and my yaya have always done. For every Greek, you'll find a different recipe for lamb, and for pretty much everything else. I swear none of us use like a real recipe. I had to sort of guess at how much I use of things and kind of measure it after I had already figured out how much I was going to use, because that's the way I do everything. But anyway, that's a leg of lamb. I'm going to throw it in the oven at 425 for about 15 to 20 minutes and kind of crisp it up on the outside. And then I'll turn it down to like 350 and cook it for about 15 to 20 minutes per pound. But throughout the process, I'll use a thermometer and just check it for doneness. I like mine medium rare, Some people like it really rare and other people can't stand it unless it's well done. Again, everybody's different, but I will cook mine to an internal temperature of like 130-ish usually. And you know, the middle is always a little different than the ends, right? Just like any roast. But that's kind of what I try to go for. So there you go. So an important thing with lamb, and personally I think this is with all roasts, any big piece of meat cooks better if you can get it sort of to room temperature before you cook it. So let it come up to room temperature an hour or two before you cook it, and then prep it and then put it in the oven, and it'll cook more steadily because then the center isn't super cold while the outside is warm. So I'm going to check my meat real quick and just see how the lamb is coming along. I think I just burnt my eyelashes. So I'm just going to stick a thermometer kind of right in the middle and see. I'm not expecting it to be anywhere near done. It's not that time yet, but then I'm just going to pour some oil and a little lemon juice. It hasn't given off much juice yet, so there isn't much to baste with. This will add to that. Yeah, see the inside? 76.2. Oh, whoop. It's jumping, isn't it? So, it's not ready, obviously, but it's kind of good to know where it's at as I go through it. And now I've put a little extra juice on top, so there's going to be more juices coming out of the meat as it goes on. So I'll come back and baste it in like another 10 or 12 minutes anyway. And I've already turned the heat down. I did those first like 15 minutes or so at 425, and I've come down to 350. And I'll leave it at 350 for the remainder of the cooking time. And I usually do about 15 minutes per pound, but I constantly am checking just so that I know what's happening with my meat and I don't want to screw it up. Like, this is a good piece of meat. I really don't want to overcook it, and I certainly don't want it underdone. So I have basted this once or twice and it wasn't giving off a ton of juice. So I had a little bit extra chicken broth that I had used in my potatoes. So I just poured that in the bottom of the thing, and that's what I've been basting with, that and whatever juices that have come off of it. So we're gonna check it. I've been putting the timer on 15 minutes, just so I don't forget to baste it, because otherwise I'll walk away and leave it for too long. I think we should be pretty close. In the interim, Mark went to a birthday party at a friend's house, 6 feet away from one another in a driveway. Great birthday party, right? So I had to let this sit and rest for a few minutes because I was afraid it would overcook. So we're right at 130 or thereabouts. And medium rare should be a little higher than that. But I don't want the ends to get done too much. So I'm going to take another down here at the end and see what that reads, because sometimes what I do is I will carve the ends and serve those, and then I'll set these in the oven as it cools. Yep, so this is still at 129, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this in for like another 10 or 15 minutes and let it come up just a little bit further. You know what, I better baste it while it's out, huh? Lots of fat bleeding off. So something to remember with lamb is it's really good if you cook it fat side up, because then the fat sort of drains through. I also do that with all poultry. I know people always say that I'm roasting my turkey upside down, and it doesn't look nearly as pretty as everyone else's turkey, but I promise you it's always juicy because that fat is running through the bird. I'm just gonna give it a few minutes more, and actually I'm gonna go ahead and pop these potatoes in to warm those back up. So my lamb should be done. The potatoes might need a few extra minutes, and last minute Mark decided we needed to have some crescent rolls, so I totally just pulled those out of a can and rolled them up and stuck them on a tray. So those will go in as I let the lamb rest. If my lamb should be about 135, probably 140 in the middle, because the ends will be a little higher than that. So I have turned my oven up to 375 for the crescent rolls, and the potatoes will be fine at that. There's enough juice in them that they won't get too dry. So let's see what we've got. It's perfect. So I'm gonna let the lamb rest, and probably like 5 to 10 minutes I let it sit here, and then I carve it because of all this mess. This is what holds together a boneless leg. So I'm gonna take this and put it on a cutting board, cut all that off, and I will carve it and then serve that. So it's just like sliced in like 1/4 inch slices. Ends will go to the kids because they like theirs more like medium rare, and Mark and I are more medium rare to rare. So we'll usually take the inner bits. And we've got our bread in there cooking, and potatoes ought to be ready any minute. Okay, so I've pulled my potatoes. My lamb has had a few minutes to rest, and I'm just gonna go ahead and slice this up. First things first, this is sometimes messy. I'm probably gonna flinch a little bit because often when you snap through this, the seasoning kind of sprays all over the place. So sometimes it's a messy job here. But just chop through this real quick. And peel this away. See what I mean? Kind of flies all over the place. And then carve. I try to do like 1/4 inch. Oh, that's good. So the end bit, it's nice and just pink. That's sort of great. Wow, that's nicely cooked. So when I pulled this out of the oven, it was at 135 in like dead center of the center. Okay, so see how it's kind of falling apart? These little bits are coming off. That happens all the time with these boneless roasts. But you know what? So much easier than dealing with the bone in. Oh, that's beautiful. I'm so happy with this. And I'm cutting a little more than 1/4 inch. I'm not really great at carving meat, but that's all right. So I will just take this, transfer it over to a platter, and I will put the potatoes into a bowl. I am going to just put a little of the juices over top. And I'll reserve the rest so that when I put this to store in the fridge, I put a little juice with it. Keeps it moist. You know, sometimes when things sit in the fridge for a while, they get kind of dry. So I will do that. And then I'm gonna put this into a bowl too. It's amazing, years and years after waiting tables and working in a restaurant, my hands are still got server hands. Still touch ridiculously hot things. Those look beautiful. So I put about 2 cups of chicken broth in this, and that chicken broth has all absorbed or cooked off, and it's just kind of like this gel at the bottom. It's like thick, kind of like gravy. And that is the good stuff. Go. All right, dinner. So dinner's all ready, and we have Greek potatoes and Greek style leg of lamb, mousse maracujá from Brazil, and crescent rolls from, you know, the Meyer. But they're in a really pretty Rwandan basket, so maybe that makes it better. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed learning about these things. Mark and I are gonna try and do a Foodie Friday every now and then. I'd like to say it's going to be once a month, but that may depend on our travels. But we're going to try and get you a food video from foods around the world, or just foods inspired by our travels around the world. And so I hope you'll enjoy coming with us. Christos Anasti.